Between the 70s and the 90s, several small but key events happened throughout the MCU. In 1974, Howard Stark launches the Stark Expo, displaying the city of the future, powered by a clean energy arc reactor that's about the size of a house. For some reason, he also hides the structure of a new element in the arrangement of the buildings, which is the kind of science it pays to not think too hard about.
Congratulations. You have created a new element.
In 1980, Ego comes to Earth, winning the heart of Meredith Quill. 9 months later, their son, Peter Quill, is born. In 1987, Janet Van Dyne is lost in the quantum realm, after she and Hank Pym attempt to stop a rogue Soviet missile targeting the United States. In 1988, Meredith Quill dies from brain cancer, intentionally caused by Ego, leaving her son a mixtape of classic rock favorites. Peter is then abducted by a band of outer space outlaws called the Ravagers. Their leader, Yondu, then raises Quill as a son, albeit very abusively. In 1989, Pym resigns from the SSR, now renamed the Strategic Homeland Intervention, Enforcement, and Logistics Division, after finding out that they intended to use Pym particles to create weapons. Also that year, Air Force Captain Carol Danvers, who uses the call sign Avenger during her flights, volunteers for a test flight of a light-speed engine created by scientist Wendy Lawson. Lawson turns out to be one of the Kree, a militaristic alien race constantly at war with the shape-shifting Skrulls, and her engine is powered by the Tesseract. When they're shot down, Carol's body is overloaded with the Tesseract's energy, giving her incredible powers and also wiping her memory. A Kree soldier named Yan-Rog abducts her and takes her back to the Kree homeworld of Hala, where she is made to believe that she's actually a Kree named Veers, fighting alongside them as a member of the Kree Star Force. While all of this is happening on Earth, things continue to develop in space. Thanos, an incredibly powerful alien from the planet Titan who's obsessed with balance, begins to seek out the Infinity Stones. Along the way, he lays waste to half of the population of entire planets, occasionally taking young survivors and training them as soldiers. Assuming that most of the more humanoid characters are the same age as the people portraying them, then his two most notable adoptions happen in the late 80s or early 90s. Gamora is taken in as a young girl after Thanos kills half of the population of her home planet. Throughout her childhood, Thanos pits her against her adopted sister, Nebula. Every time they spar, Gamora wins, and Thanos systematically replaces pieces of Nebula's body with cybernetic parts in order to make her a more efficient killer. This creates a lot of resentment in Nebula, not only against Thanos but also toward Gamora, which will greatly affect their later relationship. In 1991, the Soviet government sends the Winter Soldier to assassinate Howard and Maria Stark. This will have massive ramifications later on, but the immediate effect is that their brilliant slacker son, Tony Stark, is left in charge of Stark Industries, along with Obadiah Stane as CEO. They continue to manufacture weapons using Tony's increasingly deadly designs, selling them to all sides of virtually every global conflict, with Obadiah in particular making a profit from secret arms deals with terrorist groups. In 1992, King T'Chaka of Wakanda goes to Oakland, California to investigate arms deals involving stolen vibranium. The culprit is his brother, Njobu, who is killed in the altercation. Njobu's son, Eric, is a witness to the whole thing and grows up craving revenge. Meanwhile, Russian super soldier Alexei Shostakov and Black Widow weapons designer Melina Vostokov go deep undercover in Ohio, posing as an all-American family with their so-called daughters, 7-year-old Natasha Romanoff and 3-year-old Yelena Belova. While Alexei and Melina work to steal a S.H.I.E.L.D., or actually Hydra, project focused on free will and mind control, Natasha and Yelena experience some semblance of a normal childhood. By 1995, however, the mission is complete, and the family flees to Cuba. However, once they arrive, they are split apart, and Natasha and Yelena return to the Red Room, where they continue their Black Widow training/torture sessions. Also in 1995, Carol Danvers, still without her memories of Earth, returns to her home planet after escaping from the Skrulls. She teams up with S.H.I.E.L.D. agents Nick Fury and Phil Coulson to stop the Skrulls from invading Earth, only to learn that they're not actually the bad guys. Instead, it's the Kree that are the problem, with Yanrog and Ronan the Accuser en route in search of the Infinity Stones that will end their war of conquest once and for all. Carol, taking the name Captain Marvel, fights them off and saves a bunch of Skrull refugees. In the process, an alien cat scratches Nick Fury's left eye, blinding it and causing him to sport a fashionable eye patch for the rest of the series. Before she journeys back into space to aid the Skrulls, Carol gives Fury a pager that can summon her in case of a dire emergency. Inspired by Carol and her original call sign, Fury lays the groundwork for the Avengers Initiative, a program designed to create a team of superpowered heroes to deal with large-scale threats like alien invasions. In 1996, Wenwu, having used his 10 Rings organization to secretly conquer or influence practically everything on Earth, turns his attention to the mystical realm of Talo. After finding a magical forest near the village entrance, he meets and falls in love with the village guardian, Ying Li. The two marry and have 2 children, Shang-Chi and Xiaoling. For a time, Wenwu reforms, but when his wife is killed by his rivals, he decides to recreate the 10 Rings and train his son, Shang-Chi, to be a living weapon. In 1999, Tony Stark meets bioengineers Maya Hansen and Aldrich Killian at a conference in Bern, Switzerland. He's very rude to Aldrich, who remembers that as a sore point for about 14 years. Throughout all this, Hydra continues its secret infiltration of S.H.I.E.L.D. and all levels of the United States government. All that brings us to 2008 and Iron Man, the movie that launched the MCU. Almost everything from here on plays out in chronological order, in the years the movies were actually released. Almost. In 2008, Tony Stark is demonstrating his newest weapons in the Middle East when he's kidnapped by a terrorist organization called the 10 Rings, in what will eventually be revealed as a plot by Stane to get Tony out of the picture. While he's imprisoned, the terrorists force him and another captive, Dr. Ho Yinsen, who was also at that fateful 1999 convention in Bern, not that Tony noticed, to make weapons for them. Instead, Tony is able to recreate a miniaturized version of his father's arc reactor, using it to stabilize a piece of shrapnel that's lodged near his heart. The reactor also powers the Iron Man, a suit of weaponized armor built from scrap, which allows Tony to escape after Jensen's death.
Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave! With a box of scraps!
He returns to America, eats a cheeseburger, refines his design, and wipes out the 10 Rings, the ones in the Middle East at least, in a brutally effective display of the Iron Man's weapons. He also defeats Stane, who attempts to kill Tony and create his own massive suit of powered armor. Tony then publicly reveals his identity as Iron Man, causing Nick Fury to approach him about the Avengers Initiative. Around the same time as Tony's capture, Dr. Bruce Banner, whose 7 PhDs apparently include physics and biological engineering, is working on recreating the super soldier program. Instead of Erskine's Vita rays, he uses gamma radiation, testing it on himself and turning himself into a rampaging, green, monstrous Hulk whenever he gets angry. After the Hulk inadvertently injures Banner's girlfriend, Betty Ross, he attempts to go underground, but returns to America in search of a cure for his condition. He winds up dealing with a scientist named Samuel Stearns, who wants to recreate the Hulk, and a soldier called Emil Blonsky, who turns himself into a similarly hulking monster called the Abomination. Also around this time, S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Clint Barton, aka Hawkeye, is tasked with finding and eliminating Natasha Romanoff, the Black Widow. Barton tracks down Natasha to her safe house in Budapest, but feels Natasha wants out of the Red Room, so he lets her live. S.H.I.E.L.D. decides to let Natasha defect to their side, but requires her to kill her overseer, General Dreykov, first. Natasha and Clint rig a 5-story building with bombs and lure the Red Room's mastermind into the kill zone, but Dreykov's young daughter, Antonia, also gets caught in the explosion. While disturbed by the additional red in her ledger, Natasha nevertheless begins working for S.H.I.E.L.D. 6 months after revealing his identity publicly, Tony Stark is called to testify before Congress. Because they are justifiably concerned about a private citizen building a suit of armor that can vaporize a tank. To create their own version, they turn to rival weapons manufacturer Justin Hammer. After Tony's friend, Colonel James Rhodes, delivers a prototype Iron Man suit, Hammer and Russian scientist Ivan Vanko reverse engineer them into an army of drones. Stark also gets a new personal assistant, who is revealed to be S.H.I.E.L.D. agent and Red Room defector Natasha Romanoff, the Black Widow.
I want one.
No.
Stark and Rhodes, equipped with his own militarized suit of armor codenamed War Machine, defeat Vanko and Hammer. Over at the Ten Rings compound, a now 14-year-old Shang-Chi has become the master of Kung Fu, having been taught every possible way to kill a man over the last 7 years. Assigned to assassinate the man responsible for his mother's murder, Shang-Chi completes his mission but is badly traumatized. Unwilling to return to his father, Shang-Chi cleverly adopts the name Shan and starts going to high school in San Francisco. There he meets his best friend Katie, a skilled driver. While all this is happening on Earth, there's other stuff going on in the Golden Realm of Asgard. Loki tricks Thor into antagonizing the frost giants of Jotunheim against Odin's orders. As a consequence, Odin exiles Thor to Earth and enchants his hammer, Mjolnir, so that only someone worthy of Thor's power can lift it.